What it is, cuckolds, it's your boy the hater. And continuing off my video from before about what essentially was an NXT review and a discussion on TNA and NXT, I thought of some other things that I think would be incredible, right? One of the most important things of this partnership is that TNA has access to the WWE's wrestlers and vice versa, right? But I think an equally important thing is that they have an access to each other's legacies, right? Now, obviously, NXT has basically zero legacy. If you were to study NXT, you would consider it a colossal failure. The amount of people that have become stars from NXT, you can count on one hand. You know, the vast majority of people have been colossal failures. I'm talking your Hideo Itamis. I'm talking, even Bobby Roode. I'm talking like fucking Andrade, Apollo Crews, Aleister Black. I literally could go on for 20 minutes talking about the number of colossal failures that have come from this. Finn Balor is another one, right? But one thing that TNA has, right, aside from, in my opinion, having superior wrestlers to NXT, TNA also has a significant amount of legacy. So, with this partnership with TNA, we could see, let's say, an Ultimate X match on NXT, right? That would be fucking awesome, right? We could see a PLE that's based on TNA, right? Or like TNA rules or something, right? Bring back the six-sided ring, make things fun again. Ultimate Lockdown. But perhaps the most important asset, in my opinion, that TNA has is the X Division Championship, cucks. I don't know why I did that in Teddy Long Undertaker voice, but you know what I mean, right? The X Division Championship is unique, and it is, to a degree, prestigious. And looky, milk and cookie, in WWE, we have AJ Styles wrestling, it looks like Braun Breaker, for the Intercontinental title. Now, what's more interesting? That or AJ Styles versus Moose for the X Division Championship? The first and greatest X Division champion of all time, AJ Styles versus Moose, the current X Division champion. To me, that screams gold, right? Imagine AJ Styles, though, instead of going to NXT, where the likes of Duke Hudson and Andre Chase exist, but imagine AJ Styles versus Moose for the X Division title on a random ass episode of Raw. Now, I don't know anybody who is intelligent or rational that wouldn't prefer this over Sami Zayn versus literally anybody in the world, right? Except for maybe The Rock. Sami Zayn versus The Rock, people might prefer that. But you could have a match like Penta versus Ludwig Kaiser. Or you could have Moose versus AJ for the X Division title. Think about what I just said. Now imagine if AJ beats Moose and becomes the X Division champion. That is a title that AJ Styles can hold proudly, and a title that is not inferior to him. Because in my opinion, over the last several decades, the X Division title is far more prestigious than the Intercontinental title. Primarily because the Intercontinental title has been held countless times by colossal jobbers like Finn Balor and Sami Zayn. I know you're thinking, oh, Speedball Mike Bailey or whatever was like the X Division champion, I think, right? Who cares about that? That's why we're putting it on AJ Styles. We're not putting it on Speedball Mike Bailey, We're putting it on AJ Styles, the godfather of the X Division, right? The greatest X Division wrestler of all time. This can be like the new Cruiserweight division, but with the X Division rules, where there are no limits, right? Where Moose can go and wrestle for it, right? The X Division title is one of the greatest titles of all time, in my opinion, at least in concept, right? The X Division, X. X can be anything. That's the idea, And with all that being said, right, this leads me to my other point. I'm not saying that they need to do like an X Division, or like a TNA even, takeover, but there are a lot of wrestlers and personalities in WWE currently that have one way or another worked for TNA. I'm not talking about CM Punk and Cody Rhodes who were there for a cup of coffee, I'm talking about your AJ Styleses. I'm talking about maybe this is a good time to hire back Samoa Joe because that's really the only thing he can bring to the table, right? We have like Booker T had a prominent NXT run. He can be like the not NXT, TNA. He can be the TNA heel announcer. You know what I mean? Like Taz was with Aces and Eights. Now, again, I'm not saying this needs to happen, but an acknowledgement of the importance that TNA has played in the careers of various wrestlers that are currently in WWE, and some of which are very prominent wrestlers. TNA has been the home for a lot of good wrestlers and a lot of good wrestling, right? So you can have like a Survivor Series, let's say, right? It doesn't have to be this, elongated storyline. The Hardy Boys, AJ Styles and 2 other jabrones, right, versus Team WWE. Team TNA versus Team WWE. Even if you want to do Team TNA versus Team NXT, but, that would be like an unbalanced team. But you understand what I'm getting at. Now that we see people going to NXT, like we see like Randy Orton going to NXT to wrestle Javon Evans, in a match that like everyone knows Javon Evans isn't winning. Now that we see that, we can then see the next logical thing, right? TNA wrestlers showing up in WWE. Like Moose is a star. Moose is a bigger star, in my opinion. The potential for Moose is far higher than the potential ever was for, like, I don't know, Seth Rollins, let alone like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, which are just, I don't know why you would even think about signing Kevin Owens when you could sign Moose. Why are you thinking about Finn Balor when you can sign Moose? Why are you hiring jobber-ass tag teams, right, and creating makeshift tag teams like fucking, A-Town Down Under when you can just hire the Hardy Boys? This is what people want. We want good wrestling and good storylines, and this is both. So my philosophy is TNA needs to be propped up a little bit more and their wrestlers be taken a bit more seriously. The reality is that someone like Moose should be plowing through people in NXT because he's a TNA world champion. This is the same TNA where world champions included people like Sting and Kurt Angle. Could you imagine Sting versus Obafemi? Or Kurt Angle versus Obafemi? The only way that works is if it's like a massive squash match. Kurt Angle just gets him, 3 suplexes, angle slam, ankle lock, tap out, right? Even the former TNA mid-cardish or upper mid-cardish types, like Kevin Nash, Booker T, Scott Steiner, Samoa Joe, right? AJ Styles. These people should be running through the NXT roster. There is no circumstance under which Obafemi should be beating anybody that's not in NXT unless it's like Tozawa or some other jobber, you know what I mean? So we need the hierarchy back. And Moose, I know that he lost to Dolph Ziggler, which was a WWE jobber, but that's a mistake too. He shouldn't have. He should have speared Ziggler into oblivion, We need to bring back some prestige to some of these wrestlers instead of focusing them on NXT. And if we do that, then the good ones can rise to the top. Like Joe Hendry, I believe in Joe Hendry. Like Joe Hendry, for better or for worse, this fucker is over. So as a result, we need to reward him by having him be prominently featured, like he was in the Royal Rumble, Like at the very least, Jordan Grace is another one. Why is she in NXT? You know what I mean? Why is like Jordan Grace is in NXT? She's one of the best female wrestlers, in my opinion, ever already, right? In terms of like her look and her in-ring ability, And she can, I'm not saying she's great on the promos, but she can cut a promo, Like she's in NXT, but in WWE, we have Naomi, right? Like Naomi is not better than Jordan Grace at anything, Naomi should be in NXT. You understand what I'm saying? We need to recalibrate the hierarchy, taking NXT into consideration. Because it's going to happen anyways. Like, do you think that in, let's say, a year, Jordan Grace gets called up to the main roster? Like, do you think that if in 1 year, I'm saying, in 1 year, we have Jordan Grace versus Naomi. That's a squash match that Jordan Grace is going to win in 3 minutes. She's going to be wrestling against like Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair and the people that are higher up on the card. Not Naomi, especially not Naomi in 1 year. So why not just do that now? Why are we wasting our time? Oh, is Stephanie Vaquer going to be able to defend against Jordan Grace? Who the fuck cares? Nobody cares about this. We should prioritize success over lack of success, right? This idea that we let people stay in NXT and even TNA and even the Indies for longer than they need to is absurd. Especially when there's no confidence in how this all shapes up in the end. They let Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens rot in the Indies, right? And then they got them when they were in their 30s, and quite frankly, they're both underachievers. I don't care how you cut it. They're both underachievers because they completely go there and just wrestle each other, basically. Like their entire storylines are involved around each other, or bullshit, Like none of these, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens have had basically zero accomplishments or moments that don't involve each other, right? That's all they do, is they circle around each other, and it's like, why would you do this with them? Do it with the Hardy Boys, The Hardy Boys were like 10 years ago. Could have gotten the Hardy Boys and skipped them from NXT, put them there and just have them do the same exact things as, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, right? What would make more sense? The Hardy Boys main eventing WrestleMania or Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens main eventing WrestleMania? Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are the losers. Like they're never going to be legends. Like we'll pretend they are, but they're never going to be legends. I'm talking about real legends. The Hardy Boys are real legends. Just using that as an example. You could have done it with Dudleys. You could have done it with Harlem Heat back in the day, You could have done it with anybody, but you choose to do it with these two jobbers. Because the implications are that these indie guys are better than they actually are. Well, why don't we instead look at the hierarchies as they're meant to be? How about instead we actually value how good someone is? Trick Williams, what do you bring to the table? Virtually nothing. I mean, he's got a good physique. He's got one of the best physiques, if we're being honest, right? He's got good size. He has presence as a result of those two things. Not very entertaining, not very charismatic. He's got a flying knee finisher that Triple H would do for free. And, quite frankly, it's like, yeah, he's jacked, but I just watched a clip of The Rock and Triple H. There was one clip of Triple H on Conan O'Brien, and Triple H is twice the size of anybody on NXT right now, including Braun Breaker. It makes everybody look like complete chumps. Triple H's arms were 3 times the size of Braun Breaker's arms, and 4 times the size of Trick Williams' arms, right? And it's there's no world in which Triple H, based only on appearances, would ever get his ass beat by an Obafemi or something like that. He was fucking enormous, motherfuckers. I'm not talking about after he stopped doing the roids or whatever happened, But I'm talking about Triple H in his prime, in the late 90s. Yeah? He was just unbelievable, So it's we don't have those people anymore. So what do we have? Well, let's look down the list at the next best thing. To me, it seems like the next best thing is probably LA Knight, Moose, and Braun Breaker. That's it. Everybody else, in my opinion, has nothing going for them. So why don't you push those 3 guys? Why hasn't WWE already signed Moose? Yeah? How do you let Moose just sit there and fester? He's 40. Yeah? Because you want to take your time signing some guy called Chris Island from LFG and thinking that this guy or some guy named Shiloh who's missing a tooth, that these guys are the answer. These two like Shiloh and the other guy, Shiloh and the boyfriend of Maxine Dupree, that guy's the weirdest looking motherfucker of all time. He's just this chubby, ugly dude. I can't even believe that he's in the WWE. So we don't need to see any of that shit, We need good wrestlers. And the hierarchy needs to be changed as a result. So, in this general discussion, I want to emphasize the importance of this working relationship and how it can be used to further both brands, to further both companies. Nobody wants to see Stephanie Vaquer versus whoever the fuck TNA Women's Champion is. Nobody wants to see this. Nobody wants to see, Fraxium and the Hardy Boys. I don't want to see the Hardy Boys beat Fraxium, which they obviously will do, unless everyone's lost their minds completely and they want Fraxium to be TNA and WWE champions, which I highly doubt. We want to see the Hardy Boys versus the Street Profits. Hardy Boys versus the Usos or something like that. You know what I mean? Or New Day. Established tag teams in the main roster where they belong. Same thing with Moose. Why is Moose stepping up to Obafemi? Why does he go step up to Cucky Rhodes? Can you imagine that? Moose and Cucky Rhodes face to face? You'd be how long is it going to take for Moose to completely eat this guy in 5 seconds? The answer is 5 seconds, cucks. Wouldn't Moose and Gunther be far more compelling than Moose and Obafemi for the jobber title that nobody wants? We have to look at the importance of the title and the presentation. Now, you may make an argument that the NXT title is more important than Gunther's title, and I might actually agree with that argument. I think Obafemi is better than Gunther, but you understand what I'm saying? At least Gunther's on Monday Night Raw, and he goes on pay-per-views. That's where Moose should be. Moose shouldn't be out there, beating up jobbers. Oh, Moose versus Tony D'Angelo. That's going to really bring in people. Now you can do that once in a while, but the logical conclusion here is that WWE should be tapping into the good parts of TNA and not diminishing them by comparing them to theoretically comparable, NXT concepts, right? I want to see X Division even at WrestleMania. Oh shit, I never thought I'd see X Division match at WrestleMania. Ultimate X. AJ Styles, Seth Rollins. You can make it a big deal title, right? Because it's a big deal. That's what I'm saying. I want to see something awesome again. But now we don't see anything awesome. Now we see things will Ricky Saints hit the Rochambeau on Wesley or not? Who the fuck cares? None of these guys are ever going to be big stars. Moose has a chance to be a big star. Even though he's 40, he has a chance because he looks great. And, you can push him to the moon really fast if you're smart. But the problem is they're not smart. They're dumbasses. So we're going to get what we get, and we're not going to get upset. Cuckolds.